Welcome as people join us today for this LBV webinar around transport connectivity of Leicester. We'll be starting in around about a minute's time. So get yourself gathered in, get yourself a drink if you want a drink, and you'll have a chance to find out more about how the investment is taking place both at regional level and at a local level around transport for Leicester. The format for the webinar will be similar to previous ones with for LBV. So we're using GoToWebinar, and partly how that works is if you've got questions, if you want to use that the question function there. So we'll be taking questions at the end of the session, and so if you could submit them in there, then we'll try and get through as many as we can during that time. There's also then a chat function as well, so you might want to share information with other attendees today. Okay, we're going to make a start. So a big welcome today to this LBV webinar. And I'm Robin Poynton, I'm the chair of LBV, and also my day job is as MD of Go Travel Solutions. And it's a big welcome today to Stacey Ass from the campaign for the reopening of the Ivanhoe line, for Sarah Spinks from Midlands Connect, and to Chris White from the East Midlands Railway. And hopefully we'll be joined also by Adam Clarke from Leicester City Council, Councillor Adam Clarke, just addressing some technical issues there at the moment. So very big welcome, and I say we're going to be recording the session, so it's going to be available afterwards. The slides from the session also will be shared as well. And this is a whole series of webinars that we've been doing as LBV, as Leicestershire Business Voice, to help inform our members about what is happening at the minute, but also plan changes in the future which impact on business. We're going to start our session with our first poll. So here we are. So question number one for you is, how important will good transport connectivity be for your Leicester business and your staff post-pandemic? So 3 responses options there, if you'd like to select your one. So either is it essential, helpful, or not important? And here comes back the responses. Oh, well, okay. I guess we may be preaching to the converted already, but 100% of people here see that transport is essential. And I guess probably part of the reason why you're here today is because of that view. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Chris Wright from East Midlands Railway and to bring us up to date with all the developments. Very active space, the railways, and lots of new announcements recently. So over to you, Chris, and tell us a bit about really how East Midlands Railway are looking at interregional connectivity going forward. So thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Rob, and good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, my name is Chris Wright. I'm the Commercial Director for East Midlands Railway. And I think this short slide presentation should be quite timely, given that in the last few weeks we've introduced a new timetable that certainly affects Leicester and the region. So I'll move on to that. So if we move on to the first slide, please. As I say, in the last few weeks we have undertaken a introduction of a new timetable. New timetables can range from tweaks around the edges, slight moves of train times, and very minor things, through to what this was, which was a really extensive timetable update for East Midlands Railway. And really it was on the back of a huge investment that's been taking place over a number of years, over £1.5 billion invested in the Midland Main Line. And that is significant because that has been the enabler for us to introduce this new timetable. And it's really led to 2 main advantages which has enabled these improvements. Firstly, it has enabled what we call a SIP path in and out of London. And I know we are talking really specifically around Leicester and Leicestershire, but this becomes really relevant for our train service. So what that means is roughly we can get a train out of London every 10 minutes and into London every 10 minutes. So that's 12 trains in and out, whereas before that was only 5, and that's been achieved by increasing the number of tracks, mainly between Bedford up as far as Kettering. The other thing that's been happening in that space is that the railway has been electrified from Bedford as far as Kettering. So again, recognising that doesn't quite reach the geography we're talking about today, but I think what is significant is now there are plans in place to extend that electrification as far as Market Harborough. I'll pick on that a little bit in a moment, but that does bring it into Leicestershire, does bring it into the South End, and of course will be an enabler for bringing it further as far as Leicester. I think that work bringing it into Leicestershire, I was having a look, struggling to believe it myself, living in Leicestershire, that it will be our first mainline or first electrified route in Leicestershire for passenger use. So that's quite significant, and probably shows where we are at the moment in terms of the region, in terms of how that compares with the other areas of the country for electrification. So I just wanted to pick up on a few of the key changes that the new timetable has brought for this area. There's a lot of detail in here, and I'm not going to go through every point one by one, but I just want to pick out what some of the key changes are. So starting off specifically with Leicester, what the timetable changes allowed us to do is to improve our frequency of services on the main line, frequency of services connecting to St Pancras, obviously going south, that is going towards south of the county, Market Harborough, on towards Kettering, Wellingborough, Bedford, Luton and St Pancras, and going north, the main line takes you to either towards Nottingham or to Sheffield via Derby. And as part of that, being able to improve the early weekday train times into London St Pancras. So if you so wish to get into London by 6:10 in the morning, that's now achievable. And also most of the off-peak train times are now under 1 hour 10, many of them 1 hour 7 minutes is the fast journey time to Leicester. Elsewhere around the county of Leicestershire, I think it's worth mentioning as well. Loughborough, for example, gets improvements in terms of weekday journeys. Again, similar to Leicester itself, it's the same train in fact, but Loughborough gets a train that gets into St Pancras 45 minutes earlier and gets a later train back to Loughborough in the evening, and again gets faster journey times to and from London St Pancras, with the majority being around 1 hour 15 minutes. We'll just move on to the next slide, please. Other areas around the region, Market Harborough again gets an additional peak weekday journeys, later journeys back to Market Harborough in the evening, and again earlier trains into London in the morning. So for all of those stations, Loughborough, Leicester, Market Harborough on the main line, you can get into London by 6:10. One of the significant parts of that actually that is worth noting is that one of the reasons you might want to get into St Pancras by 6:10 in the morning is when we get back to normal times again, that would have allowed a connection onto Eurostar, which I believe would have landed you in Paris around about 9 AM. And that's quite a significant statistic for the region, that you can leave Leicester in the morning at a not wholly unreasonable hour and end up in Paris for 9 AM. What the timetable has also done, though, is not only affected the main line, it's allowed us to unlock some improvements on the regional connectivity. And I think, given the title of the presentation, it's really important to stress how it has done that and what it's achieved. So Leicester is connected on one of our service routes to Nottingham and onward to Lincoln, our Leicester-Lincoln route, which is one of the departures you'll see leaving Leicester to the north. And we've been able to put in later evening weekday services, specifically between Leicester and Nottingham, Nottingham and Leicester, on that leg. And the other thing the timetable has brought now is every other train from Leicester via Nottingham to Lincoln extends right the way through to Grimsby. So that's every other hour on weekdays. I've mentioned Nottingham, Grantham, Skegness purely because I'm picking up on the Leicestershire part, and Bottisford being in Leicestershire and sitting on that line. We have got improvements as well, quite significant improvements on that line, and connections out towards the east, Forest of the East Midlands. Real improvements, particularly on Sunday services and on weekday evenings, because we're now extending what would have been our normal summer timetable, but that will run throughout the year. Just move on to the next slide then, please. So the other thing that's come with the timetable change is the introduction of new trains themselves, or different trains, shall I say, at this stage. So we're now well on our way with our introduction of what we call Class 170 units. These are replacing many of the diesel units you will see or be used to, and they're still diesel units themselves, but what they are 100 mile per hour and air-conditioned units, which is really key. And we're going to take a full refurbishment on this fleet over the next year or two. Full refurbishment, new carpets, new seats, new tables, power sockets, Wi-Fi, passenger information systems. So the level of customer offering will be significantly changed. The other thing the timetable has brought is the withdrawal of HSTs, high-speed trains that you would have typically seen on the main line, recognised by many. Built in the 1970s, many of them well over 40 years old, loved by many. Many people sad to see them go, but it was the right time, and it does make way for the introduction of further improvements coming in the future. So with that, if we can just move on to the final slide, please. So in terms of future enhancements and other things we've got planned, I've mentioned already electrification coming as far as Market Harborough. That is well underway in terms of they're at the point of vegetation clearing and starting to do some work in that space, that Network Rail. The aspiration is to have that complete by December 2023, and certainly the work is going on to look at how can electrification be extended further up the Midland Main Line to complete the job. The other significant next change on our radar is the introduction of what we call our Aurora bi-mode trains. So there's an image of one in the bottom left-hand corner there. We'll be introducing those onto the Midland Main Line during 2023. And what they are is brand new trains manufactured by Hitachi to our specification, made for this route. Significant change in terms of the customer environment. An image to the bottom right-hand corner there. Significant improvement in the latest technology for customers, and significant improvement in terms of the actual technology of the train itself. Much more environmentally friendly, but being bi-mode also gives us the opportunity to be very flexible with how we use them. The last couple of things on this slide of things that we have an aspiration to do and are looking at. With the introduction of the Auroras, we're continuing to look at how we can further improve what we would call in the railway a clock face timetable. That's really about making things run at the same time throughout an hour. So I mentioned Leicester itself is now, after those 6 paths out of London, 4 of those come through Leicester in each direction, and all 4 stop at Leicester. So what the aspiration there is, you really want a nice even spread of when they depart from St Pancras, so roughly every 15 minutes. And ideally, for somewhere like Leicester, you want them to be arriving in Leicester roughly with 15-minute spaces. So that's an aspiration we're continuing to work on. The final point on there that we, again, are looking at the moment is we have further work to look at how we improve connectivity right across the East Midlands region, and further thoughts about timetable improvements. Specifically around Leicester, one of the things we are giving some real thought and consideration to is how do we improve the connectivity between Leicester and Sheffield. That might seem, first see that actually at the moment Leicester already has a relatively good connection to Sheffield, but via Derby. But what happens to the Midland Main Line north of Leicester is it starts to have many more stops put in it at various of the smaller stations, whether that be Loughborough, East Midlands Parkway, Long Eaton, Belper, Duffield, Chesterfield onwards up the north there. So what we're looking at is it possible to adjust and maybe do something specifically between a Leicester to Sheffield service that then releases the intercity services to get further journey time improvements and also improve the connectivity directly between Leicester and Sheffield, probably not going via Derby. So that's one of the other things we're just starting to give some consideration to at the moment. So that was a very brief canter through the improvements we've got at the moment. Hope that was useful, and happy to take some questions as and when we get to that point. Back to you, Rob.
Okay, many thanks, Chris. Okay, really good overview, and lots of investment, now and in train as well as it's going forward. So do ask the questions in there in the questions bar, and then we'll come to those at the end. So thank you, Chris, for that. And now I'd like to invite Sarah. We're going to continue the theme around interconnectivity for the region. And Sarah, tell us what's on the radar with Midlands Connect. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Good afternoon, all. Yeah, I'm taking you out of Leicester, out of Leicestershire. We're going to talk about the whole region. So if we can go on to the next slide, you can see what our patch consists of. We're the yellow bit in the middle. There are now 7 STBs that cover the whole of England. That's a subnational transport body. And really, they're all different sizes. They're all slightly different remits. But really, what we focus on is, as Midlands Connect, is finding that evidence to say this is what we need and this is where we need it. It's about saying with one voice from the 22 authorities across the region, this is what we want. This is why you should be investing in the Midlands, or why government should be investing in the Midlands. You'll hear me talk about the strategy a few times. Our first strategy came out in March 2017, and it was very much about what infrastructure is needed to boost the region's economy. We actually created almost a blueprint of what we should look at in the next sort of 2 or 3 years, because transport infrastructure takes a long time to come. We can't just say, let's have a new railway, let's have a new road. These things take years and years and years, sometimes decades. And by having that conveyor belt, or whatever metaphor you choose to use, you've got that sort of alignment with policies of things that could happen at the right time. So it's really about sort of saying, this is what we need to have in place in order to have the infrastructure we need going forwards. So not only do we talk about movements within the region, we also sort of obviously think about how things get through us as well, because my chief exec loves to talk about going on a bear hunt. You can't go over the Midlands, you can't go under the Midlands, you've got to go through it. So we've got to be aware of those journeys as well. And then finally, as we come towards the new strategy, it's not just about rail and road and freight connectivity. It is about the technology and the digital and the mobility. And then we've got the whole decarbonisation agenda to consider as well. So going on to the next one, you'll see in a bit more detail the sort of area we cover. So we go all the way from the Welsh borders all the way over to the Lincolnshire coast. So yeah, most of my time pre-COVID, I think was spent sitting on a train somewhere, usually desperately throwing slides together for things. So it's about creating the solutions, understanding the problems, creating the solutions, and saying to government, this is what we need to do, and working very, very closely with people like Highways England, Network Rail, HS2, to really have that combined voice, if that doesn't sound too cheesy. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of ideas of some of the things we do. I think if we go on to the next one, we touch on some of our work with HS2 and the integrated rail plan. We're all sitting on the edge of our seats waiting for the integrated rail plan to come out. Really, it's going to tell us about how HS2 works with the rest of the network. We all want HS2. We all want HS2 in its entirety. I think that's key. We want it to be the East Midlands hub to be in Toton, because that gives us the best chance of actually extending it northwards and getting that full network further down the line. Well, I'm going to talk in a minute about Midlands Engine Rail, which is essentially our rail programme that works with HS2. So it's not just the areas that have got stations that get the benefits. Other areas will get benefits. They'll get more frequent services, better speed, better journey times. From that capacity that HS2 releases on the rest of the network, it's really making the most of it, whether that be passenger and freight. So if we go on to the next one, I just mentioned Midlands Engine Rail. cantering through these now. This is our rail programme. As I say, we're waiting for the IRP to come out, but this is our rail programme as it stands. And how does this impact Leicester? Well, if you have a look at the green lines, that's what we call Midlands Rail Hub. That's a project that actually increases capacity in Birmingham, which you think, why does that impact Leicester? Well, what we want to do is get those regional services. You know, we want to make it sort of 4 trains an hour to Leicester, 4 trains an hour to Nottingham. But in order to do that, we have to create this extra space within Birmingham. And I'm not just saying New Street. The whole piece of this work also surrounds sort of Moore Street, because Moore Street and the HS2 Street and Curzon Street are going to work very closely together. It's going to be a bit like sort of St Pancras King's Cross, but I think even closer. So, you know, people are going to be wanting to go into Moore Street so that they can make that change. So another element of the rail hub is that sort of link you see there from Coventry to Leicester. Now this, we released an updated business case on this a couple of weeks ago, and there's a document about it on the website. This is basically saying we need these direct services from Coventry, Leicester and on to Nottingham. You know, Coventry and Leicester are 2 massively growing cities, and if you try and take the train between them at the moment, yeah, I think you've got a 4-minute connection at Nuneaton, which doesn't always work as well as it should do. That's a diplomatic way of saying that. But really, you know, we need to make that connection. And when we were looking at the business case, if we extended that up to Nottingham, it actually got better and better and better. So I'll just pick on sort of those 2 rail projects because those are the ones that will have an impact on Leicester. But you can see it's a comprehensive network of projects that cover the whole of our region and beyond. We did a survey of about 10,000 people earlier in the year, and I think we had about an 82% support rate for this sort of rail investment and this rail programme, really opening up the region and allowing those east-west links to happen. So, spoken about the railways, I'm going to move on to the roads. I'm picking on one of our road projects in particular, just to let you know, we have, I think at the last count, we had 49 different projects on the go. So, you know, I'm picking just a couple. There are many more things going on with Midlands Connect. So please have a look on the website. If there's anything that you want to ask or you know, you want to know more about, then just give me a shout. So as I said, the original strategy came out in March 2017, and before then we were saying to all our partners, all the local authorities, I should probably mention that when I say the partners, we've got 22 local authorities, we've got the Chambers of Commerce, the LEPs, the airports, and then Highways England, Network Rail, HS2 and DFT. So, you know, huge group of people. You can imagine trying to get them all into one room is fun. Trying to get them to agree on things, that's hilarious. But this is our partnership and this is what we work with. Now, when we went out early on to say, what should we be looking at? Where are the key issues on the region? Almost everybody, all the authorities had things that they wanted to do with the A46. Worcestershire were like, oh, well, you know, Evesham's a bit congested. What can we do around that? Coventry, well, actually, these junctions are a bit stuffed. Leicestershire, well, actually, we need to get some more housing in here, so maybe we can do something with that. Lincolnshire, can we get to the ports, please? You know, everybody had their plan for what the use of the A46 and what it was done. So when we put these together, the DFT started to get quite excited because this is a strategic route across the country. It's got a port at both ends. When you start looking at the businesses that are made up along this corridor, we're not necessarily talking high finance, legal. We're talking logistics, manufacturing, things that require that road link. And if you look at the amount of exports that are on this corridor, it's much higher than the national average. I think, if I remember rightly, the GVA, you know, 9% of England's GVA comes from areas within that corridor, and something like 27–28% of the things manufactured are actually exported. So we started to look at this as a corridor because not only does it serve the businesses along there, it will also take traffic from the very sort of congested, what we call the Birmingham box, these sort of M42, M5 elements. But what do we do to make this work? Well, that's what we've been looking at. And more, you realise this isn't necessarily just a transport issue. I mean, we don't build roads, railways and things like that just for the hell of it anyway. Transport's an enabler to make things work, to make things better. And this soon become apparent with the sort of corridor approach as well. So the Midlands Engine are now involved as well. And we're working on this together to work out actually, if we think of this as a wider, and I mean sort of wider than just Department for Transport, so we're bringing in other government departments, housing, business, bays, all these sort of different areas, saying, look, if we can work together in the regions, then you can work together in Westminster as well. So I'll sort of leave that one there. There's quite a lot about that again on the website if you want to know more about that. But essentially what we're doing is looking at how we create a productivity plan for that corridor. Now, there are other corridors that we're looking at as well. The A50, I think, is marked, A50, A500 is also marked on that map. That sort of connection from Stoke to Derby onto Nottingham, and then again potentially on into the Humber Port. So taking this corridor approach is something that we're starting to look at now. We're calling it something in the region of sort of place-based planning. You know, it's not all about that sort of transport, it's about the place and what we want it to be, and the sort of regeneration opportunities as well. So moving on. I think, sorry, this also ties in. Obviously, you know, we move with the changes. We've got lots of different things going on with across the region. We've got free ports, we've got gigafactories, we've got the development of East Midlands Airport. All these things we need to make sure tie in. And this is what I was saying, transport's an enabler. It makes these other things possible. It makes them happen. And this is why when we start talking about the corridors, it's not just about the transport, because we have to look at how these things tie in as well. Now, if we go on to the next one, I talked about our strategy refresh. Why are we refreshing it? Well, we've done a lot of it. As I said, we brought in this sort of proposal about this is what we're going to focus on over the next few years. And we've done it. We've done a lot of those feasibility studies. So we're moving on. We started the strategy refresh about 18 months ago now, so pre-COVID. But we are now reassessing. Everybody's reassessing. We've got climate emergencies. We've got the whole levelling up agenda and people trying to define what levelling up means. And obviously sort of COVID as well. So we're reassessing the objectives, the projects we've talked about, but we're more mature as an organisation. You know, how do we as a partnership work better for the local authorities and the partners? And how do we work better for DFT to make sure those things work together? So yeah, if you hear a lot from us, our strategy should be coming out later in the year. If you go on to the next one, dependent on, and this is a caveat, some of the other strategic things that we're waiting for, which include things like the transport decarbonisation plan, the integrated rail plan, which I mentioned, and the future of mobility, rural mobility. So watch this space. There's a lot going on with Midlands Connect, and thank you very much for having me.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Sarah. I know there's so much happening there. It's really difficult to, a real challenge to get it in. So we'll be sharing those information later. And like you said, there's lots of links on websites and stuff to get into more of the detail behind that. We've now moving on with taking our kind of microscope where we've been looking at regional. We're coming into a bit more of the locality, and we have a poll question here for you. So we'll run this poll, which is about and we're going to be hearing more about this in a few minutes from Stacey. Do you think having railway links from Leicester to the west of the county, Colville and Ashby, and onto Burton would be beneficial? So you've got 4 choices there. So if you'd like to select one of those, yes, undecided, or don't have enough information to make a decision, or no. So place your votes. Right, so, and here come the votes. Right, so lots of strong support for that. And now I'd like to invite Stacey to help. That 11% of people said that they didn't have enough information. So Stacey, it's over to you to close the gap.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Robin, and thanks to LBV for inviting me along this morning. If we can go on to the first slide, please, Robin. Fantastic. I'm from Cllr, which is an acronym for Campaign to Reopen the Ivanhoe Line. If we move on to the next slide, I'll explain exactly what the Ivanhoe Line is. And on to the next one, please. There we go. There's a map, as you can see in the east there, slightly faint, but you've got Burton upon Trent with a line, and I should point out an existing line running from there through Castle Gresley, Swaddling Coat, Moira, National Forest, Ashby, Colville, Ellistown, through Maynells Gorse, Park and Ride, into Leicester South. We're running running freight there at the moment. The only part that isn't connected is that little part of the right-hand corner there in the west coming to Leicester, which is the link up to Leicester main station. But that's just an overview of the line, and the beauty of it is the line exists. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, it was closed to passengers in 1964 under the Beeching rail cuts. Restoration has been talked about quite a lot over the last few years. There have been feasibility studies and the line had been rejected in terms of restoration. Next slide, please. However, the old expression, it is different this time. And the key thing that kicked the whole thing off was the Department of Transport back in 2019 announcing the Restoring Your, and I've added, local railway fund, £500 million, which was dedicated to closing local lines closed under those beaching cuts. This led to the formation of Cllr. We're a voluntary organisation. I've got no background in rail, but my colleagues in Cllr are all experienced in the railway industry, either at an engineering level or a project management level. And I'll come on to more of that in a moment. We were able to challenge previous reports. Crucially, this time round, we've received backing from all the MPs along the line, the councils along the line, and that includes financial backing, which has been very crucial for us, give us a fund to work with in order to get the project off the ground. We received public backing from industry, a high profile example there being Amazon. We've pointed out there are new industries. Industry has grown along the line. We all know that if you drive along the 511, all the sheds that are there. The National Forest has been created and we've seen massive population growth. Next slide. And you can see there, just to demonstrate it, Northwest Leicestershire, South Derbyshire, some of the biggest growths in population we've seen across the UK. You can see at the top there, the average growth rate between 91 and 2019 versus the UK. So, you know, we've got a lot more people trying to use the same infrastructure and a lot more industry trying to use the same infrastructure. Next slide, please. However, despite this, both Swadlincote and Colville, by population, remain some of the least connected towns by rail. That's the top 20 least connected towns by population in the UK. So we've got a strong case just in terms of sheer volume of people in the area. Next slide, please. I think we all know, anybody who travels along the 511, it's slow, average speed 28 miles an hour. If you've ever tried to get a bus, I would recommend you don't. It's a 2-hour bus journey, including changes. There's been no real plans for improvement. There's a bit of work proposed on the A511, but really just building up bottlenecks. The line itself, I mean, is a ghost despite being there, and that's the crucial thing. The line is there. Next one, please. Oh, and a little picture just to prove that point. Next slide, please. So the vision. Want a commuter line, a half-hourly service at peak times. Want to support weekend tourism. None of the stations listed there are decided. That's not down to us. That will be down to the councils involved. But we have put together a recommendation that includes those. We haven't made a suggestion that it be done in one stage. We're prepared to accept a partial opening over time. And that some of that does depend on the link from South Leicester, which will be renamed Leicester Ivanhoe, I believe, up to Leicester main station. And that's part of another project, but we can get the line up and running by 2024 for passenger traffic. We're proposing park and ride. There's a big environmental impact of this, and we're keen to point that out. Next slide, please. Oh yes, we better flick through these because there's some fancy animation that's been put in there. We don't have time. Benefits, obvious ones: reduced road traffic pressure. Tourism, look at the number of visitors there across the board, particularly the National Forest. Leicester supporters coming from Colville will certainly be impressed by having a line. We've got a commuter service, we've got resilience there, we're building in resilience to the infrastructure. Next slide, please. Where we are today, just to finish up, the project's been shortlisted to 10 nationally, so we've made it this far. We submitted a strategic outline business case on the 31st of May. And for a voluntary organisation, we have produced CapEx, OpEx, operating expenditure estimates, revenue estimates. There's been an environmental impact report which we commissioned from Derby University, a land value capture report, and we've given details of the supporters across the board in that plan. If passed, the next stage is called the outline business case stage. And at that point, as a voluntary organisation, we have to step back because all of a sudden we start to contract on an engineering front. So Cllr then is going to be concentrating on public relations. Next slide, please. I will finish up there. So our role from this point onwards, should we go through to the next stage, is to increase visible public support from the general public and from commerce as well. And we've got a lot of that at the moment. So as people in commerce, if you can email me, if you're in support of this, particularly the 89%, if they can email me and give us their public support, that'd be absolutely great, because it all help with the campaign moving forward from this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stacey. And so lots of real content there. And sorry, apologies, it was a whistle-stop tour of that one, but I say a really good local project there, which I say is looking to really make a real difference around connectivity. So very shortly, hopefully if technology allows, we're going to have Councillor Adam Clarke joining us. We've got a poll question just to start off. And so I wonder whether, say, if you can see on the screen now, you've got an option to choose between one of these. So if you'd like to place your votes. Now this is, you can multiple select on these, so it's not all that apply. So which of these do you feel would benefit your business and your staff? There's 5 different options down there. So if you'd like to place your votes, please. And the votes are in. Okay, so interesting mix here. So the one that sort of ranks highest is the local walking facility, 73%. A whole range of different ones there as well. So without further ado, I think we're going to invite Councillor Adam Clarke. I don't know if you can hear us okay, Adam. We'll see how
Robin,
this
can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah,
Wow,
coming through. So
miracle.
I don't know if you can see your slides. So I'll pass over to you now and come off screen. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's been quite a challenge to get here. I'm not going to apologise for the fact that you can't see me. No apology is needed. If you could move on to the first slide, please. I just want to give you a whistle-stop tour of the work that we're doing in Leicester. I mean, before I do, I'm going to talk a lot about cycling and walking and public transport in the city, the kind of intra, but we've obviously been talking about the kind of interconnectivity, and I think de minimis for the City Council. We put a lot of work into thinking about rail. The electrification of the Midland Main Line is de minimis for us. The connection to Coventry will bring huge benefits, and both Coventry and Leicester are really pushing hard on that. And the work of Cllr, which I have been involved in and talking to Cllr over the last few years, is incredibly admirable, and we are supportive of the work and the benefits that can bring. The revenue challenge and the Knighton curve, the infamous Knighton curve coming into Leicester Station, are huge challenges, and we're looking to government to support us to overcome those challenges. But in the city, transport we're presented with a lot of challenges, entrenched challenges. We've been doing a lot of work recently to try and overcome those, but those challenges remain entrenched. And on the screen there, you can see many of them. And I'll point to the bottom right, actually, the fact that 38% of households in Leicester don't have a car, which is away from the national trend. And so we do need to find alternatives to get what is called transportation equity. The environmental challenges are equally concerning. The congestion challenge and the impact of congestion on the economy, huge. The fact that Leicester is walkable and cyclable is a no-brainer. So the work that we're doing is really trying to get that transport equity within the city. Next slide, please. This really just sums up where we are as a city. We have a climate and emergency. We have health issues. We have what people might call, and people have called, the obesity emergency, the issues with type 2 diabetes that particularly affect communities such as those in Leicester. The fact that we need to become a more connected city, and sustainable growth is an inevitable need. These are the challenges that are interplaying against each other and the challenges we're trying to meet. Next slide, please. So just here again, some tiles just showing you some of the objectives we have in relation to the climate emergency, which really is if you exclude the phrase, the slow burner here, but the biggest overarching concern for humanity. And we are very aware of the needs for us to meet that challenge. And what you have here, and you can see online on our climate emergency pages on the Leicester City Council website, are the objectives that we've developed in relation particularly to transportation to help us to overcome those challenges and therefore reap the other wider associated benefits. Next slide, please. We work within what's commonly known as the transport hierarchy. We've been very aware of the benefits of the reducing need to travel over the last 15 months or so. I think that travel is inevitable. The need to travel is inevitable, and travel brings huge benefits, not least human interaction, which I'm sure we're all pining for more of. Active travel and the health benefits that active travel can bring, as well as both the environmental and economic benefits they can bring, is something that we are pushing for. Zero emission mass transit is again a priority. Looking at opportunities for shared mobility, moving away from the single person in the private motor vehicle is absolutely important. And zero emission private vehicles is something that really is the minimum that we are looking for in the future of the city as we stand, taking us forward to the kind of 2036, which is the stage of our next transport plan, which is in development, that I'll talk about in a moment. Next slide, please. Recently, we have announced our intention to apply as part of our levelling up proposals to transform our railway station to provide additionality to the benefits that we've heard from previous speakers, but also to make that into a fit for purpose, high quality link from rail into other transport modes within the city. And this image here is one that's been developed as part of that bid. Now you can move on. Thank you. There were a couple of things that I saw when I came into my role as something that Leicester needed to do to demonstrate that it's genuinely serious about meeting the transport necessities in cities like Leicester. One of those was electric buses, electric mass transit. Where we have the most power is in terms of park and ride. We have a very deregulated private bus landscape at the moment, but we have successfully now electrified our park and ride in the last couple of weeks, bringing in 11 electric buses. That will move to 13 as we bring in the hospital hopper service to connect our hospitals. We're also bringing through a free city centre link service to connect the transport hubs, the railway station, the 2 bus stations, including the in development St Margaret's bus station, which will be the UK's first zero carbon building of its type. And that city centre link will also provide greater access to residents of the city to what the city centre has to offer. We know the challenge of challenges for city centres post-COVID in the internet world, and with the improvements in local out-of-town shopping that we have seen recently. And we are also developing an enhanced partnership scheme using new government leverage, as it were, to better tie bus operators to the local authority and the shared benefits that enhanced partnership can bring around ticketing services, fleet, timetabling, etc. Next slide, please. I mean, this is really putting down a marker, really, that I hope is almost a metaphor for the work that we're doing. We've started to introduce, first of its type, a network of green roof bus shelters, promoting biodiversity, promoting green transport. This network of solar powered and around 30 green roofed bus shelters really help to hopefully ramp up the perception of public transportation in the city. Next slide, please. I've mentioned St Margaret's currently in construction. We've just awarded the tender for the build of that project to build the UK's first zero carbon bus station that will host electric buses as well, and will provide a much better experience for those users of St Margaret's, and will hopefully welcome in some new users, and also make the National Express, if we're talking about intercity connectivity, the National Express services much more attractive to those who can benefit from travelling long distances distances as well as short distances by bus. Next slide, please. I should say within that comes infrastructure as well, connecting the bus station for cycling and walking. People will be aware of the amount of infrastructure that has gone in terms of cycling and walking. This is Lancaster Road, one of our beacon schemes that runs parallel to New Walk, our Georgian promenade, which we don't allow cycling on. On the other side of New Walk, we've got the London Road scheme, and the figures coming through for usage on London Road are incredibly impressive. And the ramping up of cycling use over the pandemic has demonstrated that if you build it to a degree, I caveat, if you build it, they do come. And next slide, please. Our COVID-19 pop-up cycle lanes enabled us to put in flexible infrastructure. We gave out or fixed around 1,000 bikes to enable key workers and others that needed bikes during the pandemic, but what that also did was help us to really experiment and look at the benefits of putting in effective cycling and walking infrastructure as well, because we had to put in infrastructure that supported social distancing in shopping centres and such like. But what that's enabled us to do is to do what people might call experimentation whilst also dealing with the pandemic, and that has been very successful from our point of view, not uncontroversial, but we felt we seized a moment. We installed the UK's first pop-up cycle lane, and the rest of the nation followed. And we're now looking at how we make those permanent where when necessary and where the benefits can be reaped. Next slide, please. People will have seen across the city our partnership with Ride On and Santander, and we've now introduced the beginning of what will become the UK's largest electric bike share scheme. This is something that we feel is key to the future of sustainable mobility within the city for short journeys, very much like electric buses. I personally felt that if we didn't at least try bike share in the city, our reputation as a city that's strong on sustainable transport would not stand up, and I'm delighted that we were able to introduce the UK's largest e-bike share scheme, and that will roll out to 500 bikes and 50 docking stations over the summer, and we're looking to do even more out into communities and to other employment areas. Next slide, please. I said there are caveated around build it and they will come. You also need to deliver behaviour change there as well. You need to provide training, give people confidence to use bikes in particular, as well as actually confidence to use bus as well. There are people with mobility needs that may not feel confident to use public transport, but particularly bikes, cycle training. And what you can see here is people from the St Matthew's estate, a part of the city that is particularly historically affected by poor air quality. Women learning how to cycle and getting the cycling bug, and as well as building the infrastructure, you've also got to give people the confidence and demonstrate the joy of cycling too. Next slide, please. This is just another slide that demonstrates a lot of the behaviour change work we're doing that I'm as proud of as our infrastructure work. Even though the infrastructure work is much more high profile, the behaviour change work is critical to rising the number of cycling regular cyclists in the city. Next slide, please. I just wanted to talk to the funding environment we're in at the moment, just for the last few slides. Here's just the range of pots we've had to dip in over the last couple of years to deliver the exciting schemes at pace. That takes resource, obviously, but it also means that we're in a what's we call a tombola environment. We develop projects without a level of certainty that we're going to be able to deliver them. We always have those projects in our back pocket to bring forward for future opportunities, like the railway station and the levelling up that we're putting together at the moment. Similar proposals have gone forward before. We hope this time it will happen. Next slide, please. To help us to give continuity, maintain momentum, and actually increase momentum, we are about to go out to consult on our latest local transport plan and include within that the proposal to introduce a workplace parking levy, similar to that in Nottingham. We want to ensure that services meet the needs, housing needs and job growth. We want to ensure that we can begin to push back on the congestion issues in the city, address those poor air quality and climate emergency issues, and tackle those health problems that I've alluded to previously. And again, please, next slide. So that local transport plan will go out to consultation very soon. Really, there are three overarching principles: developing a hub and spoke model, connecting healthy neighbourhoods and managing demand for car use. Next slide, please. So this is the progress we've made since 2019. Probably our beacon manifesto pledge, our most high-profile manifesto pledge, was to consult on workplace parking levy. The work has gone on behind the scenes since then, working with De Montfort University, working with Nottingham City Council, working with many other partners, talking to the business community throughout and others. And it's taken us to a point now in the next couple of weeks, we will formally, lots of informal engagement has taken place, we will be formally putting out consultation materials. And next slide, please. That is a real whistle-stop tour through what we've been doing, and I hope you can see that lots has been achieved, but momentum has been building to achieve much more to make Leicester an even healthier, better connected city. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, thank you for the range of information there, and just as showing there is a massive program of activity really around connectivity of the city. We've got we'll ask this question now, and then I'll invite the panel to come back on there. So we've just got a few minutes left. We are going to be in a restricted panel session, but place your votes please on this one. It'd be interesting just to get your take whether the information today that's made any difference. Has it made you more skeptical or more positive about the future? So if you'd like to place your votes there, please. Okay, great. Okay, so majority, 80%, basically are encouraged and see it improving. There are a few people that feel it's getting worse. Hopefully they can be convinced in different ways, but we need to beware responding to where people are at. If I could then invite the panelists to come back up just for the final few minutes. I know we've had a number of questions submitted. One I'll just pick up from, I think from Mac Alibi, and I think it's already been answered actually within your presentation, Adam, but there's a question there about what form of partnership on the bus side is the City Council looking towards going? Adam, do you want to give your response on that?
Just very briefly, yeah, it's, what is available to us in terms of quick wins currently is something called an enhanced partnership scheme, and so we're working very closely with the bus operators to develop that enhanced partnership, which we think will bring huge benefits over a quick period. What is beyond that, the potential for is franchising. Now that is much more difficult. It's even more difficult than it was for Andy Burnham in Manchester, which took many years. In a city like Leicester and with our governance, but that is there for us to work towards. But we have an exciting programme of development in terms of the enhanced partnership scheme, which I hope we'll be able to talk about much more in the coming weeks and months. Okay, thanks, Adam. Question perhaps for Chris here. I know I think it came from David Jones. It was kind of question stroke comment, and I think if I know David, I think he might work for Cross Country Trains actually, but he was referring to the you alluded there to about the Leicester Sheffield regional services being improved. Is there any more you can say on that one? Is this about providing intermediate connectivity with some of the stations like Belper and elsewhere?
Yeah, I think that's an aspiration, and we'd certainly like to look at that because we think there's a market there, and it's something we began exploring what could be done. I think what's quite interesting and listening, with the likes of Sarah's presentation and things around the Midland Connect is one of the challenges is there's a lot of demand across the region, and one of the challenges I think we'd all face, and certainly David is from cross country would know as well, is particularly in those sort of corridors through Trent Junction and out towards Nottingham, and how we can take some how can we take some pain away from that area, provide additional connectivity, and open up some of those opportunities for the Coventry to Leicester, Coventry to Nottingham service and things like that. So I think there's a lot of factors in there, and we're really keen to explore how that can be achieved.
Okay, thanks. Sarah, do you want to add something?
Yeah, something that I probably should have said earlier is obviously I talked about a lot more services coming into Leicester, and at the moment there isn't the capacity for that. So one of the pieces of work that we are doing with Network Rail is a capacity study around Leicester Station to work out how to best use that space and what infrastructure is needed to get all those extra services in and out of the city.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. If I could ask a question, actually, it's one of the, I guess, one of the questions that often businesses ask, and it's one of the things, particularly around inward investment. But Leicester to London is just over an hour. When, Chris, will it be under an hour?
It's a good challenge. One of the problems for us is the constraints at the south end of the route, in all honesty. So there was a lot of good work done in the previous 10 years about incremental line improvements and getting 125 miles per hour. It's probably fair to say that most of that has now been achieved. It may well be that with electrification, there's some more incremental gains that can be made from just better acceleration that comes with electrified trains. But ultimately, the challenge on those last 7 minutes to get Leicester regularly under an hour is likely to be at the south end of the route. And in all honesty, the issues that we've faced there is that in the last 5 years, we've had the big expansion of the Thameslink connectivity. So capacity at the south end is extremely challenging. That's a very woolly answer, giving no commitment.
Yeah, I didn't think there was a definitive answer, but thanks for that. Good. Okay, we are up on time. I just want to give a final chance for our presenters. If there's any one final comment you want to make, or one sentence comment around transport, connectivity, and Leicester, is there anything that you would like to add, really? You know, we've got the kind of the business community on the call today, but is there anything that comes to mind that you would like to inject at this point? Sarah?
It's not all about transport. You know, we can produce the best business case in the world, but unless we've got business support and MP support behind it to push for that investment, it's not going to happen. So it's a trifecta, really. You've got to have the evidence, you've got to have that, but you've also got to have that business support and the MP support.
Okay, and I guess similar for yourself, Stacey, really, in terms of you've invited their businesses to obviously get in touch with yourself around the Cllr project.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, one of the big motivations for business is to get access to the employee market, and having and widening out the rail infrastructure will make it easier for employees to get into Leicester, in order for businesses to access that. Look at Amazon, who are busing people out to Ellistown on a daily basis.
Yep. Okay. Many thanks. Okay, well, so big thank you to Chris from East Midlands Railway, Chris Wright, Sarah Spinks from Midlands Connect, Stacey Ash from Cllr, and also from Councillor Adam Clarke from the City Council. We will be sharing the presentation and slides, on the website, for the LBV website. On your screen, you'll see there's a bit more information, so do go to the LBV website. If you're not already a member of LBV, then why not? Then please do join us. We've got a members offer, starting in the summer, where basically we'll pro-rata that membership for the next year and a half. So it'll be a great opportunity. And we've got a members dinner coming up with the City Mayor. So that is part of the package. And I want to say, hopefully you keep yourself safe. Have a great weekend, and there's a certain thing called Euro 2020 taking place, I believe. So I think a number of us might be enjoying that. I know some of our colleagues today are in fancy dress at Edgbaston for the cricket. So look out for the Flintstones there. So I think there's one or two members of the LBV board are in costume today. But want to say a big thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you found that useful. It was, as I say, at pace in terms of an overview of transport and what's happening in regards to Leicester, but hopefully it gave you a really good flavour. So do take care, everyone, and thank you.